підведе нас. Ручка нас підведе.
Так.
Я пароход вилітаю на землю пароход.
It's July 3rd. Ukraine Media Center from continues its operation. My name is Svetlana Cheparenko. Right now, in these walls of Ukraine Forum, we're opening the photo exhibition Armed Forces of Ukraine. I want to introduce our guest who will tell you more about this exhibition, what we will be able to see there, and how they were all involved in creation of this exhibition. So joining us this time is Serhiy Saibodner, the head of Ukraine Forum, Vitaly Sarantsov, Stepan Kupyev, People's Deputy, Alexander Svetotsky, the Editor-in-Chief of Law in Ukraine, Editorial. So dear colleagues, can you please tell us more about this exhibition? How have you come up with the idea of its creation? What is the idea we want to convey to the people? What we want to demonstrate with this? Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear guests. You know that it's not the first time that we hold an exhibition like this. Well, once Putin was counting to take over Ukraine within 3 days, and we have repelled, our armed forces have repelled that enemy's attack, the invaders' attack in Kiev and Chernihiv regions. We've thought that it would end in 3 months, but now it will be soon at day 500 of the liberation war, and we don't see an end to this war. Behind those dry figures, there are tens of thousands of the best young sons of Ukraine, Ukrainian patriots. Behind those dry figures, there are tens of thousands of mothers and children's destinies which were oppressed. And our task as the journalists, as we know, is not to be a collective organizer and propagandist, but to write the history of the modern times. And Ukraine Forum, as an experienced mass media organization of more than 100 years old, which bakes fresh news on a daily basis, is a co-organizer of today's photo exhibition, the Armed Forces of Ukraine. You can see it by yourself that the exhibition is quite serious. Serious creative forces are involved, and I'm ready to see all of you in the walls of Ukraine Forum. I want to thank you for expressing interest to this photo exhibition, and I would like to give the floor to my colleague Vitaly Sarantsov, the head of Armia Info. Thank you. Dear guests, dear colleagues, today we've gathered once again to see the grandeur of the bravery of Ukrainian defenders through the objective view of the Ukrainian correspondents to get involved in the life of Ukrainian armed forces. Those photo pictures, they tell about the history of our nation, about our capability to support each other in difficult moments. They show our pride to be Ukrainians and our faith in the future. This exhibition is the embodiment of our thankfulness to our defenders who are in the ranks of our armed forces, who defend our independence. Every picture is a history of bravery, and they all demonstrate the loyalty to our people, to our state. They demonstrate that the defense of our independence is a task that unites all of us, the civilians and the military and the government. Every picture is the evidence of life under conditions of Ukrainian versus Russia war. They show the price we pay for our freedom. And I want to thank once again to everybody who got involved in organization and preparation of this exhibition and its demonstration in this hall. I want to give the floor to my colleague, Mr. Stepan Kubiev. Dear colleagues, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. You know, the history of the armed forces of Ukraine is the story of Ukrainian sovereignty. The history of the armed forces of Ukraine is the history of grandeur, of preservation of values and the future of our country. We need to be thankful to the armed forces of Ukraine, the special forces, the volunteers, the medics, all of those who are engaged in resistance now, and those great citizens who now repel the enemy's attacks on a daily basis. They deserve our respect and honor. I'm talking about people in both occupied and non-occupied territories, those warriors who died for giving us this opportunity. We want to thank them for their courage, and I will tell you about the people who help us for the fourth time on this topic, the Indomitable Nation. And I think it would be right if every mother, every woman, every man, every Christian will pray this night about the life, about the freedom, and for appreciation of the armed forces of Ukraine, and honor with a minute of silence the memory of those who gave their lives for the values of Ukraine.
Дякую, шановні.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. I want to say that the Ukrainian armed forces in their fight for the sovereignty was created more than 180 years ago, and creation of the national army is a fundamental of the successful state. In the conditions of this fight against Russian invaders, we remember Ukrainian military traditions, and me as the head of the memorial with the colleagues from the parliament, we investigated this topic more than 30 years. Along with the experience of Ukrainian Cossack state, we remember the war traditions of the 20th century. I mean, the 20th century fight for freedom of 1917-1919, and the fight of OUN-UPA, Ukrainian Insurgent Army, in the years 41-54. Being encircled by the enemies from all sides, Ukrainians were able to create a powerful troop. The Black Zaporozhye Ukrainian Galish Army, the Steppe Division, the insurgency of the Holodny Yar, and today is the armed forces of Ukraine. And those are the examples of the legendary courage that we see now on a daily basis, and which continues as a part of our history, intensifying the level of the national conscience. Ukrainian warriors demonstrated their capabilities against the prevailing forces of the enemy. Ending up in immigration, Ukrainian military have not left the attempts of the armed resistance but got involved in political liberation initiatives. The famous commanders Mikhailo Malinovich, Yevgen Konovalets, Pavlenko, Petro Dяченко, Marko Доброручко, Yuri Tyutyunik, Dmitro Vitovsky, Miron Ternявsky, Yakov Halchevsky, Kois Pestushko, brothers Chuchupak. They've become the legends of Ukrainian national revolution and the establishment of the state in year 1721. You see now on these pictures there are commanders of the branches who demonstrate the invincibility and the big future of our state through the trust in the armed forces of Ukraine. During the World War II, Ukrainians ended up in the middle of the biggest disaster of the 20th century. The repressions of Stalin and Hitler totalitarian regimes put in jeopardy the survival of the Ukrainian nation itself. The national freedom was defended then by Ukrainian insurgent army. Starting in year 42, they started their fight with the Nazi and communist occupiers. After the end of the World War II, realizing the idea of national independence, Ukrainian insurgent army deployed significant resistance to the communist system. Within years 54 of the 20th century, Ukrainian insurgent army made it, building the obstacles in Russification of the Western Ukraine. That's when the Western Ukraine resisted. And should Kiev fall now, the things that were happening in years 1941-42 would have happened in the West: the destruction of the nation, the elimination of and eradication of everything alive and of value to us. The period of resistance was supported by the period of resistance by Ukrainian insurgent army was supported by the Ukrainian people in the West. Such people as Roman Shukhevich, Stepan Bandera, Dmitro Krechkivska, Vasil Kuk, Oleksiy Hasina, Dmitro Gritsai, Petro Fedun, Roman Kravchuk were the big names who were building the Ukrainian nation. In today's fight against Moscow invaders, the armed forces continue the example just as 100, 200, and 500 years ago. I was making this introduction so we understand that the creation of the army doesn't happen within the last 1, 2, 5, or 10 years. It's the history of the values, the history of fights. Olena Teliga once said that the states, they stand not on the dynasties but on the unity of the people, and this unity of the people is now being demonstrated by the Ukrainian armed forces, the Ukrainians in general, the Ukrainian citizens all over the world. We are 65 millions, those invincible and most valuable that will help us build successful Ukraine. Being united in a fight against Russia, we got stronger as the people and as the nation. On these pictures we can see who are on the edge, who are on the tip of the spear. Those who lay their lives for the future are heroes from the armed forces of Ukraine and other military formations, intelligence, counterintelligence, and special operations unit. But let's be honest, the war has not started 500 days ago, not even 500 years ago, when the siege of Zaporizhia has risen in the region of Zaporizhia. They were democratically electing their leaders, and they were solving the most important issues of the freedom and liberty. This is the notion that characterizes Ukrainians most of all today. The freedom we were defending, the freedom we were standing for, the freedom which is inherent in our nation. Why history is so important today? Because understanding and memory may be erased, may be lost, but what our brothers in arms do, this is the fourth exhibition that we see. It tells us about that important, that eternal on those pictures we can see the Cossacks of the modernity, the Ottomans and Hetmans. Their ranks are different, but their souls and hearts are the ones of the free Cossack, the people who preserve Christianity, the prayer and the values. Just like then, they destroy the occupiers. They have no mercy on the enemy, but they care about their people. Our fight is not 15 months long. Our national liberation war from 2013, starting from the beating of the students in Maidan, and really Euromaidan is the 21st November 2013. The historians will sort it out. Now the discussion is around this issue, but at the same time I would like to say that as the world will try to forget the price of the peace that Ukrainians pay for the liberty of all the people around the world, we will remind them with those pictures that you see today, where you see the chronicles of the indomitable nation. I was reiterating the prophet words of Levko Lukyanenko: the war will end when we will not want peace but victory. We all want victory, so victory is close. But at the same time, colleagues, I would like to say that today in the battlefield there is a lot of youth, and I think that it's necessary to address the youth who in their fights, in their lives, I need to reiterate to them that they fight not only for their country, but for their future. The best sons of Ukraine, upon the call of their heart and love to Ukraine, join the ranks of the armed forces of Ukraine, and they have no mercy to the useless enemy who chooses nothing in their way. They hate, they kill, they destroy, and many of the young heroes gave the most valuable, the most precious, gave their lives. Some of them were 20, 23, 18. They are children. They are that history written in blood for our future generations. The youth can fight today in the front lines and in the rear, and in the economic front and digital front as well. In creative and scientific fronts, they support the fight as volunteers, support the fight on a daily basis for every Ukrainian, both men and women, who spend their time experience in the front lines. At the same time, I want to thank the youth for their conscious position in this fight, and this is something that gives the future to our state, something we believe in, something that demonstrates by the formation of the army. When we see this side, year 2014, and on this side we see the years 2022, 2023, this is something that requires from us to pray, to work, and to continue believing in freedom, stay invincible, and to win. You know, being here in these walls, we agree on longer time for press conferences because those are very important statements and messages that I've mentioned, and there is a lot of people today who deserve some specific appreciation for their support of this photo exhibition. I want to appreciate the input of Anton and Vitaly, Bakhmatyuk, Belik, Brochuk, Butz, Blonsky, Budinsky, Balanuk, Veresenko, Hadzalo, Gritsky, Groisman, Daniluk, Diki, Dubas, Zhurilo, Kisil, Kozlovsky, Krusik, Hrinev, Kolesnikov, Kurman, Globazuk, Lukyanenko. Nadia is the wife of Kolokyanenko, Luchechko, Marchechko, Martinenko, Martinuk, Morklanik, Moritz, Nalivaiko, Nebozhuk, Neshuk Yevgen. Minister, please, Mr. Yevgen, you're here. Thank you for coming. Dmitro Nikitin, Volodymyr Ostantyuk, Okhabsky, Pertsev, Perevezentsev, Pirus, Polishchuk. It's also our Fedor. Fedor, please show yourself. It's one of the people who were making this exhibition, and not only this one. Prichodko, Prokopiev, Svetotsky, Sirota, Smoliy, Sereda, Tabachin, Titarchuk, Tustanovsky, Хмелівський, Холоднівський, Чима, Шевченко, Юнко. You have our support and appreciation for support of all the issues we've made. We also want to thank Bukin, Vinnik, Gladkий, Demchik, Zubik, Ivanchik, Ivachev, Kozlovsky, Kostyuk, Kadik, Kravtsov, Krush, Kryskiev, Konik, Kudryavtsev, Kuchapsky, Lavrenyuk, Lopatnyuk, Bechержак, Вередюк, Павелко, Пешко, Пертко, Ревуцький, Ставнюк, Шевчук Володимир, Шевчук Микола, Ganenko Шпак, and Yankev. Those are the people who've made their best effort for the latest exhibition we were present on, and I want to thank Anton Vitalik, Kuchapsky Yuri, Nikitin Metro, Markevich Ivan, Dubas Bogdan, and Andriy, who are in this hall, Ostapyuk Volodymyr, Pirus Volodymyr, Bots Volodymyr, Kolesnik Maxim, Prokopov Igor, Bachinsky Yevgen, Blonsky Mikhail, Kisil Rostislav, and Tabashin Morislav. That's an issue subject to discussion, but those are the people who support the volunteers movement, the people who support the issue of the books, they support the issue of the new movies, they support our history, support our victory, and support the future. Glory to Ukraine, glory to each and every of you. It's my pleasure to give the floor to my teacher, Alexander Svetotsky, who in fact did not only discuss with us as a memorial and the fund of King Danilo with Ukrinform, who does a lot to make sure we can demonstrate it for the whole world, Armia Info, and I would also like to mention the foundation of King Danilo and the Law of Ukraine and those present here who helped us to do things, who continue helping us to do and will continue helping us to do things like this. And on the day of Pokrova we will be able to demonstrate the photo history of the truth, of the facts, of the freedom and victory. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the armed forces of Ukraine. Thank you. Glory to the heroes. Or here is the cover. Mr. Alexander, you know the teacher is always more important. The almanac we will present in our issue. There will be a number of books. Now the first one is being demonstrated here, the liberation war of Ukraine against Russia in 2013-2023. Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Alexander Dmitrich is academic. Please, thank you very much, dear Ukrainians, dear participants. It's day 495 that the armed forces of Ukraine defend the God-given land of Ukraine against the terroristic state of Russia. I'm convinced, I believe that this time the Russian dictator from Kremlin has committed a huge mistake, and he will have his spine broken against the Ukrainian people and Ukrainian country and Russia, this country that called themselves so, and they have nothing to do with their name, by the name, and they don't have nothing to do with the Slavic nations, with the great Slavic nations. Actually, that's all lies. That's something they try to feed their people for centuries and centuries. This is why when 495 days ago the full-scale war has erupted, I was trying to get the territorial defense forces with my wife. Unfortunately, my age did not allow me to do so, and the Minister of Defense told me, Mr. Alexei Reznikov, my former student of the law faculty of Lviv University. I was a professor back then, and Mr. Stepan was also a student there of the mathematics faculty. He was all the time among the activists, and he said, you better issue the magazine Law of Ukraine. You're fond of documenting these events, so please issue the almanac. So I called Mr. Stepan, dear friend, let's think how how we can start doing it, how we can call it, how are we supposed to organize this work. But it was not the first year that we work with the Ukraine form, but we have not worked with Information Agency of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and the Ministry of Defense before, but I attended one of the briefings where there was present Deputy Minister Hanna Mahler. I wanted to talk to her. She's the PhD in law. I introduced myself. She knows the magazine Law of Ukraine, so I asked her to get me in touch with the head of the Information Agency of the Ministry of Defense, and I'm absolutely satisfied with our cooperation now. We are friends with Ukraine Forum for a number of years. We issued a number of almanacs, Army Inform and the Voice of Ukraine, the parliamentary newspaper represented by Natalia Fedorovna, the editor-in-chief. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore, but his name is still there. And the law magazine, The Law of Ukraine, plus Memorial, Human Rights Organization, and the Charity Foundation, the Foundation of King Danila. So we started pondering over the name of the exhibition, what to call this almanac. There was a number of names, and this name, The Unbreakable Nation, was born. First it was the Invaders' War, but then we've corrected ourselves and we've realized that the nature of the liberation war, this is what it's most likely looking like. This is why we called it so. But then it happened so that we started pondering over what's on. We wouldn't like to close that door of offer the cooperation, and we decided to call it the first book. The first book, The National Liberation War of Ukraine against Russia in 2013-2023. Well, we'll remember that in 2013 it was Euromaidan, which resulted in today's events. Shouldn't the students go out in Maidan back then, there would be no revolution of dignity, there would be no further events unfolding, because everything has its consequences. And we are happy to see Yevhen Mishuk, the voice of Magdan. We all adored him. I was coming every day. It was my pleasure. Mr. Stepan was one of the commanders, and they were telling me, "Grandpa, let's go." There are tasty sandwiches there, but then there were those tragic events that started unfolding. This is why we built it this way. I mean, the almanac, we structured it in a way to demonstrate all the topics that are one way or another related to the full-scale invasion. Our almanac is opened by the video address. First there was one of our president, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, but there was a number of them, but in our opinion the most emotional address was the greeting of our president during the new year, and our victory starts from the 24th of February. This address can be reached through QR code. Then there was another not less emotional address of our Commander-in-Chief Valerii Zaluzhnyi. He said there was time to bring back what's ours. You've all seen that address, and we couldn't help but give it the video address of our Epiphany, the Archbishop who will be taking part in this chronicle too. And the structure is organized in a way to cover all the events starting from the 21st of November 2013 and all the way until now. So we will end the preparation for the printout Feder, the designer, is present here, so we are about to finish it by September 2 or 3rd, so that we make it until the day of the Defender, which was postponed from 14th of October. Yeah, was it, or wasn't the law yet adopted? Yeah, so we have a month to make sure we have all the issues printed, and printing this chronicle within a month. Upon printing this chronicle within a month, we will be presenting it probably here in Ukraine form. Apart from this photo exhibition, there will be another photo exhibition dedicated to the Day of Independence. We would like to cover the topic which is not less important than the armed forces of Ukraine. It's one of the key topics, but we also have to cover the issue of our partner countries, those who support us, those who help us. The history is such that about 100 years ago, when the Ukrainian People's Republic has arisen, we received no help. In 1917, on the initial stage, there was support from Germany and Austria, but then there were revolutions in those countries, and we were left on our own, unarmed against Bolsheviks, and we've lost for another 70 years the lives of our fathers and grandfathers was blackened by the communist ideology. This is why we would like to demonstrate those countries. We've divided them in 3 groups: the supporting countries, the international organizations, and the prominent personalities of the modernity who support Ukraine one way or another. But generally we cooperate with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. We have 141 countries which are considered our partners, who voted in the General Assembly of the United Nations in support of Ukraine against the unprovoked invasion of the Russian Federation, and voted for Ukrainian formula of peace that our president delivered to the platform for discussion by the world. We just show some moments from the history of the armed forces of Ukraine during this exhibition. But apart from the name Armed Forces of Ukraine, we added the prophecy words of our great prophet Taras Shevchenko. Here's our glory, people, the glory of Ukraine. And it was the first time when Taras Shevchenko proclaimed this sentence, glory to Ukraine, and the nationalists, they have seen certain sense in it and identified it as a greeting, very successful greeting for the fighters for freedom. But Mr. Taras Shevchenko described something else in this verse. He was writing to a prominent prosaic, Grigory, a prosaic Osnovyanenko, yes, in his letter to Osnovyanenko. So we added a subtitle to the Armed Forces of Ukraine, and obviously this section is one of the biggest, and we wanted to the bigger extent covered. There is no secret, all those materials are promulgated. We've received all those materials by the Armia Inform, the Ministry of Defense Information Agency, and we wanted to cover to the maximum extent all the structure of the armed forces, starting from the, well, we were not able to fit everything. We are just limited with the space here. Every picture is in fact on one pair of pages. We were able to fit 36 of them here, so we opened the first page here, and it's the picture of our Commander-in-Chief Volodymyr Zelenskyy, because no matter what, today we'll see what kind of person he is, what a patriot he is, what a great Ukrainian. We were treating him in the different ways, but it was his destiny to become a head of this of this fight for freedom, we honor and give respect to the Commander-in-Chief Volodymyr Valerii Zaluzhnyi, with whom we relate all of our victories, and we posted his picture here too in this exhibition. We will also show the meeting of the Commander-in-Chief, the General Headquarters, the head of the General Headquarters, the Ministry of Defense, and obviously the Minister of Defense, who does a lot for the victory, Mr. Alexei Reznikov. The most attention was paid to the branches and forces. First of all, the army, the ground forces. You can see the commanders of the forces here, along with the defenders, Mr. Alexander Syrsky. Then the Air Force, another force not less important, and we're waiting for the new fixed-wing aircraft, but even today they represent a formidable force that destroys Russian targets, the enemy targets, and we show the commander of the Air Force, Mykola Oleshuk. Then comes Navy. We are somewhat deprived of the maritime space, but we preserve the force. The president was visiting Odessa recently during the celebration of the Navy, and here is Mr. Alexei Neishpapa, the commander of the Navy. I was serving in the Navy, but it was back in the 1972. I was drafted to serve in the Baltic Fleet, and then I studied 7 years in a maritime university, but now the army is different, and I order this clothing, these shirts, these t-shirts, to kind of feel that patriotism, this patriotic sentiment that we all feel. Then there comes air assault forces, one of the important forces, represented by the commander Maxim Mirhorodsky. So the airborne troops, then the special operation forces, Mr. Viktor Horenko, the commander. They preserve some secrecy, those forces. However, we still were trying to show the faces of our fighters. And the last comes the Territorial Defense Forces, represented by the commander Igor Tantsura. And obviously we demonstrate the most of our defenders possible, both male and female. Now there are more than 50,000 women in the ranks of our armed forces who shoulder to shoulder defend our land. The weapons of victory, there's yet another topic. We show certain fragments: the Patriot system, the Leopard tanks. Here's the Patriot air defense system. There are pictures of the artillery systems, something that is commissioned by the armed forces of Ukraine, something that we need more and more. We cannot tell everything now, but we aspire. Mr. Stepan just mentioned that is the 4th exhibition of ours. The first one we were holding back in March. There was the topic Indomitable Cities. Then there was another topic, Russia as a terrorist state. And I think that this topic will be laid as a fundamental of the second book. We want to show that terror that Russia started, and obviously we want to show the future that awaits for that small gray man, as Lena Kostenko called him. He wanted to rule the world, that small gray person, but there are laws of the historical justice, and I'm absolutely convinced that each and every of us trusts in victory, that we will be winning, and there should be no doubt about that. And we're not going to let that little devil enjoy his victory, because we are a strong people and we live in our God-given land. This is why it's my pleasure to invite you to see, to take pictures, and glory to Ukraine, as we always say. Stepan Bandera wanted to hear millions of responses to this call, and now the whole world knows it. Everybody who comes to Ukraine, they say glory to Ukraine, and now hundreds of the millions respond glory to the heroes, glory to the nation, and death to the enemies. Thank you. Dear guests, thank you very much for this presentation, for your personal stories that you've shared. Maybe there are questions from the floor that you would like to ask from our guests. Okay, if we have no questions, well, may I have a couple words? Well, the Heavenly 100, the Maidan should be remembered today, not remembering the defense of Maidan, those people who back in 14 changed the philosophy of Ukrainian army, the Ukrainian People's Army, the Rangers of Siege, someone who laid the fundamentals of the ideology, whose ideology was then taken to Maidan, the aspiration to this victory. I would like to ask Mr. Alexander to gift the chronicles, the photo chronicles, Ukrainian sovereignty, that we dedicated to the 5 years anniversary. Mr. Volodymyr Zelenskyy implemented the Day of Ukrainian Sovereignty. We have this holiday today when our president has seen this photographic chronicle. He signed that day to commemorate the Day of Sovereignty. So the fifth president opened the exhibition back in 2018, and then there was an order, and the Parliament adopted this day as a holiday. So let's maybe start with Mr. Yevgen, the voice of Maidan. We may have gifted you this chronicle, the voice of Maidan. We were waiting, we were listening to him. I said we're ending this chronicle with the documentary, The Indomitable Nation, and we want to ask you to have your voice continue sounding. I know about this project for a long time, and I know that it's a fundamental work, and obviously what's important is that it's happening just right upon the events, because those personalities that and those events that are not only in front of you on these pictures, but in many other photo exhibitions, they will never be enough and too much, because it's the real fact that documented that we may further on build into a narrative of the Ukrainian courage, Ukrainian knighthood for our future generations. And we don't have to forget anything. So it's a very important work. It's not some vanity. Someone may see themselves or not see themselves on those pictures. Those are the things that are being erased by the time, but they should be preserved. So I want to thank you for your work, and we will win for sure. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Dear colleagues, to commemorate the life of Lev Kolovyanovka, we've made a movie, Ukrainian Sovereignty. You can see it on YouTube. And Mr. Yevgen, we were taking advice from our partners. There was a conversation last week. We want to make a documentary. the National Liberation War against the Mongols, and we asked Mr. Yevgen, with his voice, with his historic, unforgettable voice, to dub this documentary, and he agreed. So it's the first time that we announce it. There will be a documentary voiced by Mr. Yevgen. Thank you very much. Yeah, there was an attempt in Maidan. Thank you very much. It was quite successful. Yeah, we would also like to hand over to the commander of General Headquarters. The commander of the General Headquarters was supposed to be here, and Mr. Klitschkov, the head of the department. Yes, please say our hello, our appreciation, and the faith in the victory. So if there are no more questions, we invite everybody to see the exhibition, give their proposals. We have 100% of all the proposals documented and heard too. We want to thank you as a moderator. Thank you. We invite everybody to see the exhibition, and we will be waiting for you during the presentation of the new chronicle that you've announced in these walls. Ukrainian Media Center will continue its work at 1500. We will talk about the situation in Kherson and Kherson region. Stay tuned.
Безкоштовно, будь ласка.